She's sitting on her bed, scrolling through her phone. Messages keep coming in. Her friends are tagging her in photos, and she has no shortage of people trying to get her attention. On the surface, it looks like she's fully entertained and surrounded by options. But in that mix, there's a space she can't ignore: the weight of your absence. Most men assume that when they step back, a woman instantly replaces them, as if she has a lineup of men ready to take over. That's the mistake. What really happens is that absence unsettles her. It forces her to ask questions she doesn't want to ask. Why isn't he chasing me? Did I misjudge the control I thought I had? Does he see himself above me? These thoughts cut deeper than the compliments she's receiving from everyone else. In today's world, presence is cheap. Every man is present. Every man is texting, checking in, and fighting for space in her life. What stands out is the opposite: absence. It creates tension, and tension creates reflection. When you're not there, she notices. She replays conversations, she thinks about how you carried yourself, and she silently compares you to the men flooding her with attention. The comparison rarely favors them. This is where men need to wake up. Constant presence doesn't make her value you more. It makes you predictable. Absence, when handled correctly, forces her to measure what she had and what she might be losing. It doesn't guarantee she'll come running back, but it does guarantee she'll feel the shift. And that shift changes the balance of power. This video is about breaking down exactly what a woman feels when you're not around. Once you understand the thoughts running through her mind in your absence, you'll see why silence and distance can sometimes do what words and attention never could. 1. Doubt creeps into her mind. When you step back, the first thing that hits her isn't anger or even relief. It's doubt. That small unsettling voice starts asking questions she can't easily push away. Doubt is powerful because it chips at certainty, and certainty is what most women rely on when dealing with men. When you're always present, always available, she feels safe in her belief that you'll keep orbiting her. But when your presence disappears, that safety cracks. The doubt usually begins quietly. Why isn't he reaching out? Did something change? Was I wrong about how much he liked me? These thoughts don't go away quickly because the mind naturally obsesses over what feels uncertain. It's human psychology. We notice the gaps more than we notice what's overflowing. Your absence becomes the gap that her mind tries to fill, and the more she can't answer it, the deeper the doubt spreads. Let's take a look at a scenario from pop culture. In Gone Girl, Nick Dunn pulls away emotionally after years of tension with Amy. That distance isn't just felt, it gnaws at her, creates suspicion, and drives her to extreme conclusions. Now, while that film takes it to a dark level, the core truth is the same. When doubt takes root, it multiplies. It pushes a woman to analyze, overthink, and question what's really happening beneath the surface. For men, this is where the shift begins. Most guys make the mistake of filling every silence with reassurance, thinking that constant clarity is what keeps her close. In reality, clarity kills curiosity. Doubt, handled with discipline, makes her look inward. It forces her to evaluate the connection and measure if she truly had the grip on you that she believed. That evaluation is uncomfortable, and it's in discomfort that people reassess their behavior. The key is understanding the difference between controlled absence and neglect. Controlled absence isn't about disappearing completely. It's about pulling back just enough to create space for her doubt to grow. Neglect is when you vanish with no intent, no purpose, leaving nothing but frustration. The first builds value, the second destroys it. Doubt is not your enemy. It's your ally. It doesn't mean she stops liking you. It means she starts realizing she may not be as secure in your presence as she thought. And that realization is where respect begins to grow. Because when a woman starts doubting her control, she also starts respecting the man who cannot be taken for granted. 2. Other men suddenly feel ordinary. When you step back, one of the first things that happens is that every other man trying to get her attention starts to blend together. At first, she might lean on their compliments, their texts, and their constant efforts to fill the gap. But over time, those efforts don't carry the same weight. Why? Because when something is always available, it loses its shine. Think about it. Every man in her world is following the same playbook, checking in daily, flooding her with likes, offering reassurance, telling her she's beautiful. In the beginning, it feels nice, but the more it repeats, the less special it becomes. It's background noise. And in that sea of sameness, the one thing that stands out most is your absence. It highlights the difference between you and everyone else. This is the moment when other men start to feel ordinary. They might still be showing up, but compared to you, the one who isn't always chasing, those men look predictable. Predictability is comfort, but it isn't excitement. And it's excitement that keeps her energy alive. Without realizing it, she starts noticing the contrast. She sees how easy it is to get attention from the others, and she starts questioning why it isn't so easy with you. That contrast changes the way she feels. Suddenly, every compliment she hears doesn't land the same way. Every attempt to impress her feels recycled. She can predict the messages before they arrive, the jokes before they're said, and the effort before it even shows up. Once things become that predictable, they stop feeling valuable, and that's when she starts looking back at you, because you're the one who broke the cycle. For men, this is where the lesson becomes clear. You don't win by being louder than the rest. You win by refusing to be like the rest. If every man is competing in the same lane, your strength is stepping out of it entirely. By not drowning her in the same behaviors, you make her feel the difference. And the difference is what makes you stand out. Here's where you need to reflect. Have you ever been the guy who tried to outdo other men? Have you ever been the one who thought more texts, more compliments, or more presence would give you the edge? If so, you probably realized it didn't work. That's because adding to the noise doesn't separate you. It makes you part of the noise. When you learn to step back, you teach her something powerful. Attention is not equal. Some attention feels ordinary, and some feels rare. Your absence makes her realize that yours belongs in the second category. And once that realization sets in, no amount of ordinary attention from other men can replace the impact of what you withhold. 3. Self-worth gets tested. When your presence is gone, the mind naturally begins to question. It's not just about missing someone, it's about wondering what that absence says about you. For a woman, this process often turns inward. She starts asking herself whether she really had the impact she thought she did, whether she mattered as much as she believed, and whether she still holds the same pull. This is where her self-worth gets tested. Think about how people react when they expect attention and don't get it. Most of us are used to feedback. We're used to signals that tell us we're noticed, valued, and important. The moment those signals disappear, we start to wonder if we're losing our edge. That gap creates self-reflection and sometimes insecurity. Your absence acts as a mirror, forcing her to measure her own value without the reassurance she once relied on. For men, it's easy to relate to this. Maybe you've been in a situation where someone you liked suddenly went quiet, and without meaning to, you started questioning yourself. You replayed conversations, you wondered if you said the wrong thing, and you began doubting whether you were enough. That same process plays out for women, except they're not used to experiencing it from men they expected to always be there. Let's take a look at this scenario. A performer steps on stage to deliver their act. They're used to applause, cheers, and constant feedback. But this time, the crowd stays silent. No boos, no claps, just silence. Suddenly, the performer isn't sure anymore. Was the act good? Did they lose the audience? Are they no longer as impressive as they thought? That silence forces them to question their own performance more deeply than any criticism could. That's exactly what your absence does. It doesn't attack her self-worth directly. It quietly puts it under pressure. She starts reflecting, sometimes overthinking, sometimes even doubting qualities she once felt confident about. That pressure isn't comfortable, but it's powerful. It makes her reassess not only how she sees herself, but also how much she values your presence. Men often underestimate this effect because they assume women are too surrounded by attention to ever feel doubt. But attention isn't the same as significance. 100 men giving her validation doesn't cancel out the impact of the one man who withholds it. In fact, it highlights it even more. That difference is what makes her measure herself differently. Here's the key. Your absence forces her to confront the question, was I truly enough to hold him? And that question lingers. The longer it lingers, the more it tests her self-worth. And in that testing, she begins to see that your presence carried a weight that ordinary attention could never match. 4. The balance of power shifts. Control is fragile. It doesn't take much for it to change hands. The moment your presence fades, the comfortable certainty she once felt starts to slip. What seemed steady now feels unsettled, and that shift forces her to rethink the dynamic entirely. When someone knows they hold the upper hand, they act relaxed, almost careless. But when that security disappears, the mindset changes. Doubt creeps in, caution replaces confidence, and the effort to maintain control intensifies. That's exactly what happens when your absence enters the picture. The balance she relied on is no longer tilted in her favor, and the uncertainty makes her more invested than before. Many men can relate to how this plays out in their own lives. Think about the times you gave too much too quickly. You were always the first to text, always the one planning, always proving yourself. At first, she enjoyed it, but over time, it made you predictable. And when someone knows exactly what to expect, they stop valuing it. Your overpresence created comfort for her, but pressure for you. The scales leaned in her direction, and you carried the weight. Now compare that to when you step back. Suddenly, she can't predict your next move. She doesn't know if you'll respond immediately or take your time. She can't assume you'll always be available for her plans. That little bit of uncertainty forces her to adjust. Instead of you trying to hold on to her, she starts trying to hold on to you. That's the shift, and it happens without you saying a single word. Here's where men need to be honest with themselves. How many times have you lost respect because you gave it all away too easily? How many times did you lower your standards just to keep her happy, only to realize she valued you less afterward? That's the trap. By giving her all the power, you drained yourself of the leverage that made you attractive in the first place. This doesn't mean you disappear completely or try to manipulate her with absence. It means you stop giving her the illusion of full control. Real relationships thrive on balance, not one-sided effort. When you're willing to step back, you create that balance. She sees that your attention isn't free and your presence isn't guaranteed. That's when respect grows. The truth is, people value what they can't easily control. When your absence reminds her she doesn't have unlimited access to you, it reignites her interest. It makes her evaluate her own behavior and put in effort she wouldn't otherwise. And that effort is what keeps attraction alive. In the end, the balance of power isn't about winning or dominating. It's about creating mutual respect. By stepping back, you restore that balance. You stop being the man who can be taken for granted and become the man who sets the standard. That's the position every man should aim for. Not control over her, but control over himself. 5. Craving for presence grows stronger. Absence has a strange effect. It doesn't erase you, it amplifies you. When you're always around, your presence blends into the routine. But when you step back, the lack of you creates a hunger that's hard to ignore. Suddenly, the time, attention, and energy you used to give aren't just taken for granted. They're missed. That craving grows the longer you remain absent, because human nature is wired to want what feels scarce. Think about the rhythm of everyday life. When something is always there, food in the fridge, shows on demand, your phone in your pocket, you barely notice it. The second it's gone, though, you start thinking about it nonstop. Your absence works the same way. It interrupts her pattern. It forces her to notice the space you once filled. And that space doesn't stay empty. It becomes a source of craving. Now let's tie this to a popular moment in film. In Rocky III, Apollo Creed steps in after Rocky loses his edge. At first, Rocky is hesitant, uninspired, and broken. but Apollo pulls back his full support, letting Rocky feel the weight of standing on his own. That space, the absence of constant hand-holding, is what reignites Rocky's hunger. He starts craving the fire he once had, and that craving drives him back to the top. The lesson here is simple. When something valuable isn't handed out endlessly, its importance skyrockets. The same thing happens when you're no longer immediately available to her. At first, she might brush it off, thinking she has enough attention from other men to fill the gap. But with time, that gap doesn't close. It widens, because none of the others provide what you did. The craving isn't for attention in general, it's for your presence specifically. And the harder it is to get, the more valuable it feels. For men, this is where discipline matters. Too many guys sabotage this effect by breaking silence too soon or rushing back the second she shows interest. They're so afraid of being forgotten that they kill the very craving absence creates. You've probably been there ignoring her for a while, only to give in and text her back too quickly. And what happens? The craving dies, and you're back to square one. Here's the wake-up call. Craving isn't built by force, it's built by space. It's not about making her beg. It's about letting her feel the absence long enough that she starts to miss what only you bring. That's not cruelty. It's teaching her to value your presence properly. At the end of it, the man who knows how to create this craving never has to fight for attention. His presence becomes rare, and rare things are always remembered. Your absence makes her want you more. Not because you pushed harder, but because you let space do the work. 6. Fear of being replaced appears. There's a moment in absence that cuts deeper than doubt, deeper than craving. It's the creeping fear of being replaced. When your presence fades, she's forced to ask herself a tough question. What if he's giving his time and energy to someone else? That thought alone can trigger more emotions than any argument or conversation ever could. It's easy to relate to this in everyday life. Think about when you've worked hard for something. Maybe a position at work, maybe a friendship, maybe a connection, and then someone new steps into the picture. Suddenly, you feel that uncomfortable mix of insecurity and urgency. You wonder if what you built will hold, or if it's slipping away to someone else. That same wave of unease is what absence creates in her mind. This fear grows because it's tied to pride. Nobody likes to feel like they've been replaced, especially after believing they were secure in their position. Your absence makes her see that she doesn't have the control she once thought. She can no longer assume you'll always be there. And with that realization comes the thought that another woman could easily be filling the role she used to hold. Men often underestimate the strength of this fear. They assume women never feel it because of the amount of attention they receive. But attention is not the same as connection. 100 compliments from men she barely knows can't erase the possibility of losing the attention of the man who mattered. That's what stings. It's not the volume of voices around her. It's the silence of the one she doesn't want to lose. For many men, this is where discipline is tested. The natural instinct is to reassure her, to ease the fear by proving she hasn't been replaced. But in doing so, you give away your leverage. You've probably seen this play out before. You distance yourself for a bit, she shows signs of insecurity, and instead of holding your frame, you rush back in to calm her down. The problem is, the moment you do that, the fear vanishes, and with it, the urgency she felt to value you more. The constructive point here is clear. Fear of being replaced isn't about cruelty, it's about perspective. It forces her to measure what she brings against what she might lose. It makes her reassess whether she gave enough, respected enough, or appreciated you enough when you were present. That reflection doesn't happen if you never step back. In the end, this fear doesn't damage attraction. It fuels it. It pushes her to consider how easily someone else might take her place if she doesn't hold on to yours. And that's when effort rises. She becomes more intentional, more cautious, more invested. Because once she realizes replacement is a possibility, she works harder to make sure it doesn't become her reality. 7. Attention no longer feels satisfying. One of the most important shifts that happens during your absence is that the attention she gets from others begins to feel empty. At first, it might give her a small boost. Compliments, likes, messages, and invitations can provide a distraction. But over time, that attention doesn't fill the gap. It exposes it. She realizes that not all attention is equal, and that constant validation from others doesn't match the value of the one man who isn't handing it out so easily. This is where a lot of men need to take a step back and be honest with themselves. Too many guys fall into the trap of thinking that giving endless attention is the key to keeping a woman. They believe that if they never stop texting, never stop calling, and never stop reassuring her, she'll feel secure and choose them. The reality is the opposite. When attention is oversupplied, it loses its meaning. What once felt valuable now feels ordinary, and ordinary is forgettable. Think about your own experiences. How often have you chased someone with effort that wasn't returned? How often have you poured energy into someone only to feel drained, while they felt no urgency to match you? That's the danger of cheap attention. It empties you and doesn't raise your value in her eyes. If anything, it makes her more comfortable taking you for granted. This is your wake-up call. Stop thinking of attention as a strategy. Attention is powerful only when it's selective. If you give it freely to anyone at any time, it has no impact. But when you know how to hold it back, when you give it with purpose and not out of need, it becomes rare, and rarity creates weight. That's why your absence shifts her focus, because she starts realizing that the attention she's receiving elsewhere isn't satisfying, and the one thing she wants more of is the very thing you're not giving away cheaply. The constructive part here is about discipline. It's not easy to pull back, especially when you like someone. The urge to prove yourself through constant effort is strong, but men need to recognize that this urge usually works against them. If you want to be respected, if you want to be chosen, you have to build the strength to give attention with standards. That means not rewarding bad behavior, not entertaining disrespect, and not lowering yourself just to stay in the picture. At the end of the day, what makes your presence meaningful is your willingness to limit it. The more she realizes that attention from others doesn't satisfy her, the more she reflects on why your absence feels so heavy. That reflection creates value, and that value sets you apart. So stop giving yourself away without limits. Respect your time, respect your energy, and let her see that attention is earned, not owed. That's when you stop being ordinary and start being unforgettable. Now you understand what really happens in your absence. It's not just silence, it's movement. Doubt grows, comparisons shift, self-worth gets tested, and the balance of power changes. The men who think a woman only notices what they do when they're present are missing the bigger truth. Absence is often louder than presence. Here's something to sit with. Sometimes she only realizes your value when you're no longer there to remind her. That's uncomfortable to hear, but it's reality. If you've been giving and chasing without pause, you may have trained her to overlook you. But the moment you step back with purpose, you remind her what it feels like to not have you around. That's when the craving starts, and that's when respect begins to build. This isn't about punishing women or playing games. It's about men learning to hold their ground, set standards, and stop flooding women with attention that isn't appreciated. Your time, energy, and presence have weight. If you treat them as valuable, she will too. I want to hear from you. Drop your stories and experiences in the comments. I'll be there engaging with you because these aren't just lessons. They're real situations many of us face. Let's talk about it.